welcome to Bluestone Resources Live Investment Summit today, hosted by Six. Today we're joined by Jack Lundin, Bluestone Resources CEO, and Stephen Williams, their Vice President of Corporate Development and Investor Relations. Jack's going to walk us through his company presentation today, and after we'll move to a live Q&A session where we'll be accepting and answering some questions. You can submit your questions using the Q&A panel found on the right-hand side of your screen at any time during this presentation, and as always, the summit is being recorded. It'll be available to watch afterwards on Six.com. So without further ado, Jack, I'm going to hand it over to you and you can kick things off.
Thank you very much, Cam, and thanks for those that are attending this presentation. I'm really excited to be able to bring everybody through the next 20 minutes presentation on Bluestone Resources and really focus on updates on our flagship Cerro Blanco asset, which is located in southern Guatemala. I will be making forward-looking statements during this presentation. Before diving into the project itself and updates on the project and where we're at, just a snapshot of our corporate structure. As of June 15th, we are trading at around $1.70 a share Canadian. We've got about 150 million outstanding shares, and we have about 9 or 8 million options existing today. Cash on hand is around 43 million US, and our market capitalization is around 250 million Canadian. If you look to the bottom left of the screen here, you can see our major shareholders and our shareholding structure. So the Londian family, as this is a Londian Group company, controls about 27% of the outstanding shares, followed by CD Capital, which is a resource fund out of the UK that's been investing alongside the Londian Group for many years, most recently with Londian Gold on the Fruta del Norte project, where I was previously working. And the rest is controlled by institutions and retail shareholders, as well as around 4 to 5% of the shares outstanding controlled by the management team. To the right of the screen here, you can see our analyst coverage. So we've got an average target price of $4.25 Canadian. So you can see the 5 analysts that are covering us today. Kevin McKenzie from Canaccord came out with the most recent update where he valued a target price of $5 a share. So close to 3 times the existing share price of the company today. So now jumping into the flagship project that we have in Bluestone Resources. This is the Cerro Blanco gold and silver project in southern Guatemala. Just to give you an update and a little bit of the history of the project, this deposit was discovered back in 1998 by a company called Mar West, who later was picked up by Glamis, and Glamis brought the project forward. And in 2006, after completing around 72,000 meters of drilling, they were purchased by Goldcorp. Now, the understanding of the geology at that time was significantly different as it is today by Bluestone Resources. They had interpretation of around 12 veins, and therefore they went in with an underground development concept that contemplated a very high-grade, robust, high-margin underground development scenario. Now, we picked up the project in 2017 from Goldcorp for about a price tag of 20 million US. And since then, as I mentioned, our interpretation of the deposit has enhanced significantly. Bluestone Resources has drilled over 45,000 meters to date. And as our interpretation has changed and we brought in our team of geologists, we really were able to, especially last year, look at this project and discuss amongst the project team, the geologists, and really the execution team, the most optimal way of bringing this project forward. So I myself joined as CEO in January of 2020. And with that, I brought the execution team or the project team that helped build the Fruta del Norte project in southern Ecuador. And we were able to look at all facets of the project and really understand the geology and the potential here. And we decided at the time, towards the end of last year, that we should be looking at this not as an underground operation, but as an open pit. And over the next several slides, I'll walk you through why it is we believe this is the optimal solution, why we believe we're maximizing the benefits of this project for all stakeholders involved, from the local communities up to the shareholders of this company. And now in 2021, this new opportunity that has been presented to the market in February showing that we are able to go from an underground concept to an open pit and increase that resource from around 1.4 million ounces of gold all the way up to 3 million ounces of gold at a 0.4 gram per ton cutoff. The high-grade vein component, that was really what was comprising that underground scenario, is still going to be captured in this open pit scenario. So about 1.4 million ounces at 10 grams per ton is really what makes this project stand out amongst our peers as a very profitable open pit gold silver operation. So what you're looking at in this picture here is the block model in situ as it resides in the ground. The pink area is that high grade core, and the yellowish area is the lower grade material that encapsulates that high grade core. Now with the underground scenario, because of the higher cutoff grade, we would not be able to get into that lower grade material, therefore limiting the amount of gold and silver that we could be producing. Not only that, Goldcorp was able to do a lot of exploration from the underground. They developed about 3 kilometers of lateral development underground. And interestingly, about 50% of that measured and indicated resource sits above the current underground infrastructure. Now we'll talk about how that makes a very big advantage for us in our development scenario later on. But really what it comes down to is we'll be able to use those underground workings to, 1, better understand the deposit, which we've already done, and 2, to use that as a dewatering level for the first few years of production. So we're looking at all of the work that had been done in the past by Goldcorp and really using that to optimize our scenario, our project, in order to capitalize on the approximate $170 million that Goldcorp had put into this project. So a typical low-grade mineralized envelope ranges from around 0.3 to 1.5 grams per ton. Again, that's that yellow shaded area around the high-grade core. Now, if I draw your attention to the cross-section, or this box here, which is a cross-section of the deposit looking north, it really helps to paint the picture. What we can see here is the deposit, the geology, and the geometry of this deposit shows that it's essentially an upside down cone. The veins, the high-grade feeder veins, flare out as they get to surface, which really makes it amenable to surface mining methods. And really, that is why we call the project good to great, because it goes from a high-grade, underground, very robust project to a really great, strong economic, which we'll touch on later in the slides, open pit scenario. However, before getting into the economics and more details on the project itself, it's very important for us to outline our commitment to the local communities. Our responsible development plan and our engagement and our commitment to local stakeholders and the nation of Guatemala is really a pillar for the Lundin Group and how we go in and look at developing projects in remote regions. And one of the aspects of this project and this company that sets us apart from our peers is the ability to use the Londian Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization we established back in 2006, to come alongside the mining company and really help to develop that strong engagement and really good relationship with the local communities. We focus on building capacity, and we focus on building training programs so that the local stakeholders have an opportunity to become trained for not just the operation, but also construction. And right now we've kicked off an adult education program so that the candidates for this mining operation increase substantially as they are now going to be qualified to go into that training program. Another aspect is the local supplier development. We are committed to sourcing as much material as possible from local communities. And so partnered with the Londian Foundation to make sure we're building capacity of those local suppliers is really a pillar for us as we drive the project forward into the next phase. So, lastly, we are committed to international social, environmental, sustainability standards. We will focus for the life of the project on implementing world-class mining practice. So touching on the numbers and comparing it back to the underground scenario, as I mentioned, in late February, we came out with the results of a preliminary economic assessment where we were able to show that our resource, both gold and silver, were able to double as compared to the underground, therefore doubling our overall production for the life of the project. And because we're going from a more technically challenging underground development scenario to a less technically challenging open pit scenario, we've essentially tripled the value of the project by looking at this as an optimized surface mining operation. So I'll draw your attention here to the production profile. What we're looking at on the bottom here, these bar charts, so we've got blue and gray, and the blue bar charts are showing the open pit development scenario. So this is as contemplated in the preliminary economic assessment. And the gray bars are showing the production profile of the 2019 feasibility study underground production scenario. So we're significantly increasing the production of gold, as well as significantly increasing the production of silver. And if I draw your attention to the center of the slide here, you can see life of mine average annual production goes from about 112,000 ounces a year to 230,000 ounces a year. And assuming a $1,550 an ounce gold price, our free cash flow generation pops up from $121 million a year to $270 million a year, or much more than the existing market cap of the company today. Our life of mine recovered ounces, as contemplated in the PEA, goes from 900,000 ounces to about 2.4 million ounces. And keep in mind, the silver production here is around 10 million ounces. So going back to this production profile, you'll see our peak years from years 2 to 4, when we're in that high grade core, shows that we'll be well over 300,000 ounces a year. And this is a really robust project because it's going to be having operating costs in the first decile during those peak years, which means that we'll be able to pay down any project financing facility in a short period of time. Now, touching a little bit more on the PEA results, you can grab these numbers from our corporate website, so I won't spend time on every number, but just the headline numbers. Our initial capex, as we're going from a smaller to a larger project, goes from around 230 million US to around 550 million US. Our project net present value after tax at a 5% discount is around 900 million US dollars. And all of this translates to a payback period of around 2.6 years, again, assuming a $1,550 gold price. Our IRR of the project with those metrics is around 28.5%. And as I showed on the previous slide, peak production is over 330,000 ounces of gold per year in year 2. So now just to touch on how we stack up amongst our peers. These are 2 busy slides, so bear with me while I walk everyone through it. But you can see the first chart is showing the head grade and the strip ratio. So the bar chart, the gray and the blue here, is showing the average head grade for the life of the project. Bluestone has about a 1.6 gram per ton gold average head grade. But what really makes us stand out is the low strip ratio. Because mineralization goes to surface, there's only a minimal amount of overburden required to remove before you get into the pay dirt. The second chart here, which is the life of mine average production and the market cap, you're seeing the life of mine average production in the bars, and you're seeing the market capitalization of each company in these bubbles here. So again, we're valued at around 250 million Canadian market cap. And when you look at that on a price per NAV, we're about 0.25 times net asset value, as compared to industry average for junior gold developers of around 0.5. What that means is we see significant near-term potential to see share price appreciation, and that's what we're driving forward here, and that's really the purpose for this update for all current and prospective investors on the call. So, touching on the next steps, we're going to continue to build out our local stakeholder engagement and program development, starting with education, moving into training, and in parallel to that with our local supplier development, so that the opportunities for the local community members is growing, and that we can maximize the recruitment in the local community area. We did a similar program at Fruta del Norte with Lundin Gold, and it was very successful. So we're able to take a lot of the lessons learned from that program and apply them here to Cerro Blanco. We recently completed our drilling to support an updated resource estimate. So as I mentioned, we had a resource of around 3 million ounces of gold. This year, we were already able to complete just under 6,000 meters of drilling in the upper Salinas unit, so the mineralization that's near surface. And that will make its way into an updated resource estimate in the third quarter of this year. We came out with a press release just recently showing the results of some of those holes, and now those holes are being sent to the lab up here in Canada for met work, which will help with our feasibility study and which will help with our mine plan design once that resource estimate is complete. So that'll be a catalyst in the coming weeks here that we'll be presenting to the market, that updated resource. And I believe we'll be able to add significant amount, or a material amount of ounces into that resource, both gold and silver, due to the tightening up of spacing and the understanding and the enhanced understanding of that upper Salinas unit, which currently holds around 1/5 of the existing resource. Our feasibility study is currently underway. We kicked that off immediately after completing the preliminary economic assessment, and that's going to be finished towards the end of this year and likely released to the market, those results in Q1 of 2022. And our project financing package will run in parallel in 2022 as we look to gear up with our training and planning for the construction phase. Now, it's very important to mention as well, in parallel to running the feasibility study, we are working on our updated environmental license. So we will be submitting the permit for that updated environmental license towards the end of this year, so that we can receive approvals in 2022 and move ourselves into the construction phase towards the end of next year. And we believe that we're able to do this with that tight timeline. We've been working with the Ministry of Environment to understand the timeline, the terms of reference. We've got our environmental team working closely with our project team and our engineers, because a lot of the information that feeds into the feasibility study is what's required for the updated environmental license. Our current mining license exists, and so we'll continue to be able to work with that existing mining license, which means that this permitting phase, we believe, should go efficiently, provided we use and fill out the right terms of reference, which are well defined as outlined by the Ministry of Environment. So I do have several slides in the appendices, but I did want to open up the floor to questions before going into more details on the project.
Yeah, that's great, Jack. And I'll kind of sort through some of the questions here and then propose them to you, and we can just go through them. And if you have any questions for people on the line, please just type them into the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of the screen. And I think the first question that we'll kick off with here is elaborating on that geothermal project and what our plans are for that.
Absolutely. So we have a slide here on the Mita geothermal project. So another unique aspect for Bluestone Resources is in the adjacent to the mining license of Cerro Blanco, we are licensed to generate up to 50 megawatts of renewable energy through our Mita geothermal project. Now, this is a project that has been studied in detail by Goldcorp, and we recently completed another study to see what the potential is for power generation through this geothermal plant. And we believe we'll be able to generate between 20 and 30 megawatts of power. And what we're looking to do, separate from the focus on Cerro Blanco, is continue to advance with the detailed engineering on the geothermal project. And we'd be looking, as we get ourselves into the construction phase, to see if we can develop a geothermal plant to sell into the grid and offset some of our carbon emissions that will be generated through the mining operation.
Great. Thanks, Jack. The next question, maybe taking a step back and elaborating on your vision for the company and where you see M&A fit into the future of it. Are you looking to build this project or sell it? What are your thoughts on that?
So we are 100% focused on advancing the Cerro Blanco project. Right now, we see our share price at a steep discount, and so we are not looking immediately at doing any type of M&A transaction. We know that there's significant upside potential for Bluestone Resources because we're sitting on such a fantastic project in Cerro Blanco, as well as the unique aspect of having a geothermal project in the adjacent concession. So we'll be focused, and we're developing the team and working on developing the local stakeholders so that we can have a development team and move the project forward into the development phase and ultimately into operations. Now, during that period, if things change, I mean, it is our fiduciary duty to look at opportunities out there. But right now, the strategy for the company is fully focused on monetizing the Cerro Blanco gold and silver project.
Great. And what's your take on financing strategy? Could you elaborate a little bit more on where or if a stream or a royalty fit into that mix?
Sure. So we made a significant amount of progress on the financing strategy when we were contemplating this project as an underground operation. And so what we'll be looking to do towards the end of this year is reinitiating our discussions with the syndicate of banks that we were working with last year. And because there's a significant amount of silver now with this open pit concept, there is a high probability or high potential that we could get attractive terms on a silver stream. And then from there, I mean, we'd look at putting together a stream of sorts, bank facility, and whatever overhang on equity we would look at a later date. But we are sufficiently financed to get ourselves into 2022 with about 43 million US in the bank. So we'll be looking at putting that project financing strategy together towards the end of this year.
And to end of next year, I guess, sorry.
Putting the strategy together towards the end of this year and getting project financing around the midpoint of next year.
Right. And then when would you anticipate first production?
So first production, assuming that we get our environmental license approved and we move forward with early works towards Q4 of 2022. Currently, we have around a 20-month construction timeline, which we're obviously looking at optimizing through this feasibility study phase. And that means we're targeting around mid to second half of 2024 for first production.
And then where would the permit amendment fit into that timeline?
The permit amendment, that process is ongoing right now. So we will be submitting to the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Energy and Mining our amended permit application towards the end of this year. And what we have now in our project schedule is a 12-month review period and approval period. And again, we believe that that is a realistic timeline based on our engagement with the Ministry of Environment and based on the team that we have, the contract team that we have in place that will be helping us put together the information so that it fits within the terms of reference, and therefore gearing ourselves up to submit it and have a review period within that 12-month timeline. But I believe that we can tighten up that timeline based on the information that we know and based on the process that we understand to be. Keep in mind, last year we were able to get our new our forestry permit, so we're familiar with the permitting process in Guatemala. We've been in the country for over 3 years, and we understand the terms of reference, the process that it takes to amend permits. I think we've amended over 12 now, various permits, various existing ones. Of course, this will be the biggest one that we've done, but we do have experience in this field with Bluestone and Cerro Blanco.
Right. And you've actually spent a considerable amount of time here in the last year since you become president in the country. How have you found operating in Guatemala? And then do you find things have changed from the pivot to from an underground to an open pit?
Yeah, so in March of last year, between March and September last year, the border of Guatemala was closed to international visitors because of COVID-19. So when the borders opened up, I started to go down and bring the executive team down there. And I've essentially been spending most of my time since November in Guatemala and engaging with the ministries in country and introducing the brand that is behind Bluestone Resources, so the Lundin Group, and really trying to let them gain a level of comfort that we are the right company to be in the country at this time, advancing a project of this scale in southern Guatemala. And that engagement continues to be bolstered. I do intend on spending most of my time in Guatemala to get the project over the line, because I think that's what it really takes. You need to continuously engage and work through any concerns or issues that both local and national stakeholders may have. And for me, it's been a very positive experience. And that's why we are so confident as a team to move this project forward with an open pit. Yes, it's a bigger footprint. Yes, it's a bigger project. So you're going to be, more noticeable. But we believe that we know how to do it in the Lundin Group. We've put the right team in place, and we're fully focused on making this dream a reality.
And can you elaborate a little bit more on that decision to go to an open pit and your engagement with the national authorities along the way?
Of course.
And then the relationship with the local communities.
Of course. So when you look at a mineral deposit, the first question you ask yourself is not, should it be an underground or should it be an open pit? You first need to define the size of the ore body, understand its orientation, see how deep or shallow the deposit is, and really focus on how you can maximize the potential or the benefits of that resource. Now, when we acquired Cerro Blanco from Goldcorp in 2017, there had already been so much work and so much interpretation of this project as an underground concept. However, with the drilling that we've done, I mentioned over 46,000 meters of drilling, 45,000 meters of drilling completed to date by Bluestone alone, our interpretation has changed significantly, whereas Goldcorp understood it to be, I think between 5 and 10 high-grade vertical veins. That is not the case. There's about 60 veins in this resource, and therefore, the fact that they flare up as they go to surface and mineralization does essentially go to surface, this project is much more amenable to surface mining methods. And that's exactly what we explained to the stakeholders in Guatemala, is that this is how we can maximize the benefits of the project. And of course, it's not just the technical and economic features of this project that will make it a success. It's understanding the social and environmental concerns and issues to make sure that we work with the communities and the government to mitigate any of those concerns through world-class mining practices. And again, we understand what world-class mining practices are, and we will be implementing those on this project.
Great. So a couple more questions here. Great to see the engagement from our shareholders. We do definitely appreciate that. Jack, maybe let's talk a little bit about capital markets and the liquidity in the shares. That's obviously something that we're always working on. We can maybe discuss that a bit more, what we're doing to increase that and some of the initiatives that we have, to improve that.
Of course. So obviously it's a significant change when we go from a high-grade underground project to an open pit scenario. And we did release the results of the preliminary economic assessment on February 28th. So in March, with the various conferences, BMO, PDAC, touching base with our major institutional shareholders, our major shareholders in general. There were a lot of questions on timelines, on permitting, on what all of this means for the company as we look at essentially a new project, but yes, in the same location. So, we had a big push, a big focus on keeping our shareholders informed with the rationale of why we are advancing the project in this manner. And I think that there has been a change also in the commodity, in the natural resource industry, when we released the results of this project, that was when, same day as gold hit an 8-month low. And we saw that a lot of money was shifting from precious metals into base metals. And now I think we see a pivot coming back into the space because gold price is holding strong. And I think with the uncertainty around the world, gold price will continue to stay strong. And therefore, we believe that once people really understand the opportunity that exists with a stock that is so cheap today, and we are still a near-term producer. 2024 is not far out, and once we get into the construction phase and start rolling with meeting milestone targets, I think getting the environmental license, getting the feasibility study out of the way, getting into the construction phase, there's going to be a lot of near-term catalysts that will show that this project is advancing. And I think in turn, that's going to add, much more volume, much more attention to Bluestone Resources, and therefore we would hope to see the share price increase on that.
Yeah, and just to elaborate a little bit more on that, we do have a lot of large shareholders, and so there's a pretty tight float, which limits the liquidity, but it's something that we're always working on and trying to actively improve over time. A number of questions here, Jack, around permitting and maybe elaborating a little bit more on our ability to permit the project, I guess, as an open pit, and how we feel that that timelines and the reality of that is sort of what we're striving for. I think that would be good to elaborate on a little bit more.
Sure. I mean, that is an overhanging question that we get from all of our existing and prospective shareholders. It's important to note that the mining license is not changing. We are changing our environmental license through an update. We already have an environmental impact assessment that was approved by the Ministry of Environment back in 2007. So that was completed by Goldcorp, and that has been what we've been advancing the project on. Now, with a newer project and an open pit, we need to define the area of influence that feeds into this updated environmental permit process. And because of the research that we've done to date, we don't anticipate that area of influence will change significantly. And once you define that, then you really go forward with the social and environmental baseline data from both the dry and the wet season. So right now it is kind of getting into those summer periods in Guatemala where you're getting more rain events. And in the dry period, we've already collected that baseline data. So, I mean, we're ticking all of the boxes, gathering that data, which we would then put together through the terms of reference as identified and as outlined by the Ministry of Environment to submit that, so that then they go through the review process. And through that review process, I mean, we're working closely to answer or make any clarifications on questions or concerns that the ministry may have. And from there, once we get an approval, it will trigger a new environmental license that will then be able to get our construction license off of and move into the construction phase.
And then maybe just sort of chipping in here, there is a number of projects that have been permitted in the past that we have a list of, and you can see that sort of since 2015, 2016, there's been at least a dozen different industrial projects that have been permitted in the country, and I think that also contributes to our confidence in our ability to be able to get this project permitted in a timely manner.
Of course, and understanding the process and how it went and what the challenges were, and trying to take lessons learned from each of those projects that have been permitted in the past, so that we can make sure that this process is efficient, transparent, and followed closely by by following those terms of reference.
Yeah, great. What do you think of the exploration potential is around the project?
So there is a significant upside on exploration, brownfield exploration in the region. There is a northerly trend of mineralization from the existing Cerro Blanco deposit. We do have some targets identified. Back in, I think, 2005, Glamis had drilled some holes a little bit further to the north, and we definitely will follow up on those prospective targets as soon as we move the Cerro Blanco project, forward. But we'll be looking to put together a small budget on a drilling campaign in our existing mining concession, because I do believe, and I think we all believe at Bluestone, that there is an upside potential to add either meaningful ounces through satellite pits or through another project. This is a low sulfidation epithermal deposit, and these types of deposits tend to form in clusters. So we are encouraged and excited about the prospect of adding ounces through other deposits in the region.
Great. I think that kind of wraps up our Q&A session here, Jack. We can give it another couple seconds or minutes here and see if any additional questions come in. But Cam, did you want to provide some closing remarks on the survey, and then hand it off to Jack for final comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys. I just wanted to thank you first and foremost for coming on and giving that great presentation and that great conversation. I'd also like to, of course, thank everyone in the audience for participating and showing up, participating in the event and asking questions. And just as a note, if you felt like your answer wasn't if your question wasn't answered, or if you think of a question after the summit is over, don't worry about it, because we will be sending out a short survey, like Stephen said, and you can get in direct contact with the Bluestone Resources team. And of course, you can always find more information at their website, bluestoneresources.ca. And so with that, Jack, I'm going to hand it over to you for the true final words before we wrap up today.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending the call. I think we do have some catalysts coming up in the near term, and so stay tuned for that information. I think that there's a significant opportunity here as we look at what's happened in the base and precious metal space, and Bluestone is very excited to advance this flagship project, and we're going to be 100% focused on doing just that and creating value for all shareholders and stakeholders involved. So again, thank you for attending, and Cam, thanks for organizing and facilitating this.
Absolutely. Have a good day, guys, and I hope everyone in the audience does as well.
Thank you.